Johnny Wrestling or Johnny Takeover, as my shirt says. And listen, I want you to listen. Like, we're involved right now. It's crazy. It's loud. It's hectic. We're in New York City. But I want you to listen to the No Holds Barred Network.
Hello and welcome back to the NXT Podcast. I'm your host, Skelly Bones, here on the No Holds Barred Network, bringing you all the news, reviews, and more when it comes to NXT Live every Wednesday. And last week we had our live debut of NXT on the USA Network, with the first hour being broadcast live on USA and the second hour being broadcast live on the WWE Network. We had the same situation this week, the first hour being live on USA and the second hour being live on the WWE Network. So without further ado, let's take us through the September 25th, 2019 episode of NXT Live on the USA Network. And we open on the Undisputed Era climbing the balcony to display their dominance over NXT, showing that they hold all the titles, the tag titles, the North American title, and, of course, Adam Cole as the NXT champion. After this, we have our first match of the night, Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic. Crazy opener. I kind of thought this match would have been much later in the card, if not a main event almost. So to see this as an opener, I feel like this really shows that NXT is trying to push, especially on USA, trying to push their best matches. So we start with Keith Lee and Dominik having a stare down. They start with a lot of counters in the middle of the ring. You get a Keith Lee pounce, which sends Dominik Dijakovic to the outside. Then we have a back and forth struggle on the apron, which leads to Dijakovic hitting a chokeslam on Keith Lee on the apron. And that sends us to commercial. We come back from commercial with Keith Lee hitting a spinning dive to the outside. Keith Lee hits a second rope moonsault. Keith Lee takes Dijakovic and places him on the top rope. And it looks like he's going for his Spanish fly that they hit in the last match they had. Dijakovic counters the fly, gives him a couple forearms and elbows. Counters a Spanish fly into a Canadian destroyer from the top rope. Now, you're talking about making a GIF. This is one to go for. That move looked insane. Like, if you thought the Spanish fly they did was insane, I was kind of scared. Like, Keith Lee's a big dude, and that much weight landing on your head, you hit it at the wrong position, it could go bad, but luckily, everything went well, and it was an insane spot. The crowd was very hot for this and going wild. That was probably I would say probably the biggest pop of the night. Then after this, you had Dijakovic getting the heat for a little bit. He hit a moonsault onto Keith Lee, which Keith Lee then not only kicked out at two, but sat up holding Dijakovic. Then did a roll through while holding Dijakovic, lifted him into a fireman's carry, and then hit his finisher, which is like an AA into a press slam almost. And you get the 1, 2, 3, and Keith Lee is your winner in the opening match of NXT Live. Now, my thoughts on this match are a bit mixed. I enjoyed it, but I don't think it was as good as their first two matches that they've already had. The one where they went to a double countout, and then the one where Dijakovic won. I do like the story that they have going. I like that they have now an even playing field, one win apiece. That being said, this one just didn't feel as fresh, and I think it's probably, especially for someone who's seen these matches on NXT already, their previous two, it's a bit of a novelty to see two guys of this size doing the crazy moves that they're going to do. Like, the thing with the Dijakovic and Keith Lee is nobody can have a match like Dijakovic and Keith Lee. They're the only two guys that can do it. So even though that is an interesting match, once you've seen it, once or twice, it's kind of, you start to see the formula. Now, that being said, this is also, for a lot of people, their first experience with this, so they're going to be a lot more impressed. It just didn't feel as crisp to me as their second match, which I think was their best also. Now, that being said, there was a couple other spots that I wanted to talk about. So, during Keith Lee's entrance, you had a little graphic glitch where they kind of started showing their tail of the tape graphic like in the middle of his entrance. That was nice, with the benefits of live TV. And then also Morrow had some really bizarre commentary. Not that he doesn't usually anyways, but this one just struck me where as he was spouting out facts about Keith Lee and his strength, he said, Keith Lee once pulled a Jeep with a rope 40 yards in 12 and a half seconds. Where do you get that kind of data? Like, who gives you this information? I'm assuming he just tells it to you because I don't think you can look that up on Wikipedia. And also, what does that even mean? Okay, so after this match, we get a recap of Baszler and Candice LeRae from last week. And then a tail of the tape of their match coming up. Another thing I kind of noticed that made me laugh on this was you have height, weight, of course, as normal. Then under the style portion for Candice LeRae had grit. And I enjoy that. Grit is a style, she's scrappy. That's her style, is grit. And then for Baszler's style was dominance, was one of the adjectives. Which, I'm not, there's a joke in there, but I'm not going to make it. And the last part, the accolade section of the graphic shows Shayna Baszler, 2-time Women's NXT Champion with the current reign of 331 days, which is a pretty good accolade. The accolade for Candice was her first title match. So the match that she's in herself is the accolade. I just thought that was a little bit silly. Not a major thing. It's just a part of they got to put something there, I guess. And she really hasn't done. You can't put Johnny Gargano's wife. That's not much of an accomplishment because that's really all they've done with her thus far on NXT. But we'll see. I'm sure their match next week will be very good. And then we get a Killian Dane, Matt Riddle recap where they actually showed Regal making it a number one contenders match. I kind of wish they would have shown this at the end of NXT last week instead of just ending it with the brawl like they did. We have a Street Profit promo where the Street Profits say they'll be back next week to wrestle the Undisputed Era for their titles. That's their rematch. So we'll have Street Profits versus the Undisputed Era next week on NXT. And we come back to match 2 of the night. It's the returning Dakota Kai versus Tainara. Former Tainara Conti dropped her last name, much like Cesaro and Rusev before her, and Ali. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Tainara's character is. Obviously, she was playing the heel tonight. She has a black belt. She's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. She's Brazilian. That's about all I got. She looks like she does have some definite skill. Her kicks look really good. Her timing definitely needs some work. And she just needs to develop her character and her entrance. It's just, she's in developmental for a reason. So that's what she's got to do. And Dakota Kai even looks a little rusty coming back. I mean, she's been gone pretty much the whole year. And, ACL and knee injuries, anything in that area, especially with someone who is an agile and pretty quick wrestler, it's going to affect your game a little bit. And I just think that's all that was. I feel like Kai just had a little bit of ring rust. There were some sloppy kicks, a couple mistimed looking spots. You had Tainara taking most of the opening of the match, getting some of the heat on Dakota. Dakota got a bit of a weak comeback, in my opinion. She hits her Yakuza kick on Tainara in the corner, and then hits the GTK, the go-to kick, which I'm not a fan of. And I actually, even being from Chicago, I hated the GTS. I hate the go-to-sleep. It's just not a very good-looking move, in my opinion, and it's one of those ones that's hard to do and make it look effective. It's like you're putting someone in a fireman's carry and then dropping them on their feet. Unless the timing is perfect, usually they drop to their feet before you connect with the knee or the kick in this matter. And I don't know. I guess if you're going to do that, I would rather see just a running knee or a super kick, you know? But anyways, you get Dakota Kai gets her win in her debut or return. Not a great match, but they're not all going to be, so there we go. Then we cut to Killian Dane sitting on a long chair, just looking real sad, because that's what he does. And a Johnny Gargano hype video. And then we get into match 3, our main event for the USA Hour, Matt Riddle versus Killian Dane in another street fight. Now, this match was pretty much your standard match for the first, over first half of it was just in the ring with a lot of back and forth. You had the guys, hitting moves on one another. You had Matt Riddle hit his deadlift German suplex onto Dane, where he rolled out of the ring. And then Riddle hit the Superman forearm off of the steps, which sent us to a commercial break. Again, the commercial breaks during this match kind of... it didn't kill it for me, but it definitely took away. It was already a match that was, probably 20 to 25 minutes long, and it kind of got cut. I just feel like you just miss some of that hype. Like, when you're in a match and there's no cutaways and you're with it, I am going to miss that with the commercial breaks now. Also, we had our one of our first this street fight rolls on as we go into commercial break. Let's see. Then we come back. We return from our commercial break with Matt Riddle in the corner and Dane just giving him the boots, just working him over. Riddle made a comeback. He hit 2 of his brotons, which is his standing sentons, and then a penalty kick. Dane was able to kick out at 2 and came back with a power bomb, which also resulted in a 2 count. Dane then hit a suicide dive to the outside, and now he begins to start using chairs, and this is where the street fight starts to come into play. He's throwing chairs at Dane. Dane's throwing chairs at Riddle and bashing him with them. They start brawling into the stands. You get a back and forth open face slaps and then some chops from Dane. Pushes Riddle into the wall and then with a running crossbody bashes through the wall. And we go to commercial break again. This was, the big spot. They kind of gave it away. If you were paying attention, they actually shined a huge spotlight onto that wall while Riddle and Dane were kind of fighting back and forth. While it wasn't on them, it was just on the wall, which I think the crew was a little early on their cues with that one. So we come back from commercial. Dane and Riddle are on top of the bleachers. Riddle puts Dane through a table with a senton, and they brawl back into the ring. Dane hits 3 Vader bombs on Riddle, who then kicks out at 2. A few weeks back when he beat him, he hit him with 3 Vader bombs and pinned him. Riddle was able to kick out at 2. He then decides to get a kendo stick and a chair, beats Riddle with the kendo stick with the chair laying across him. He goes to give him the 4th Vader bomb. Riddle counters, gets up, hits him with a running knee with the chair, assisted with the chair, and Dane kicks out at 2. This was a huge pop also. I think everybody thought this was going to be the finish because it was Riddle coming back and hitting his big finish with the chair assist. I was actually happy to see Dane kick out. I like seeing these two fight. Then you had Riddle getting his heat back. He started hitting Dane with the kendo stick. You got a nice pop from the crowd with the stick flying behind him, bouncing off the ropes, and then him kind of catching it back in his hand. And then you go into a Fujiwara armbar on Dane in the middle of the ring, and he then wrenches it. You had Dane holding off, not tapping, and finally Riddle really elevates the arm and wrenches it in, and you get the tap, the submission win. So next week we'll have Matt Riddle versus Adam Cole for the NXT Championship. Now, after the match, Adam Cole decides to come out and talk some shit to Matt Riddle and gets put in the Fujiwara armbar himself. The rest of the Undisputed Era run out to the save. Riddle leaves down the ramp, escaping. So that ends our live USA segment, and we go to the next hour live on the WWE Network. We open on the Undisputed Era, still on the ring, kind of nursing to Adam Cole's wounds. Then we get a recap of the street fight. We get a recap of Imperium versus Kushida from last week, leading up to their match. And then we have the fourth match of the night, Rhea Ripley versus Caden Carter. So Ripley comes out first and pretty much looks like a star. She has a very strong aura around her, a lot of charisma. She's like a female Pete Dunne, if you will. She's got very smart smirk to her face. You know, she definitely doesn't look like your traditional baby face. And she's definitely over like a face. But she does have some heel tendencies to her. But she's definitely going to be a huge star, I think, very soon. Then her opponent, Caden Carter, comes out. Carter was formerly Lacey Lane. I actually had to do a little bit of research because I was not sure of who this was. I could have been a new wrestler. But Lacey Lane actually competed in the 2018 Mae Young Classic. She got a few wins. She made to I believe the second or third round of the tournament. So you had this match starting off pretty strong. Carter came in pretty quick with a drop kick to start getting the heat on Ripley. You had Rhea Ripley hit a really nice delayed suplex a la British Bulldog. You had Carter doing some good lucha things with some pretty fancy rope walking that was relatively smooth. Sometimes you'll see some of the women, and well, not so much the women, but just younger wrestlers in general try this, and it looks kind of crappy, like they can't hit it right. She actually was pretty smooth with her rope walking and lucha things. This match was not too long. You had a little back and forth. Ripley got her heat back and then wins with her pump handle powerbomb. Quick match. You're getting over Ripley. She's gonna have they're building her up to have a match against Baszler, but who knows if Baszler or Candice LeRae will be the champion in the next coming weeks. But they're definitely building up Ripley to be the next contender. Then we had match number 5. Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus Ever Rise, who was Matt Martell and Chase Parker. These are two Canadian-born wrestlers. It was nice to see Burch and Lorcan back together again. I had actually wondered where Burch had been. I wasn't sure if he was injured or not, but had not seen him on NXT TV in quite some time, so it was good to see him back. Nice to see him and Burch together, representing the 1 and 2 connection. I really think those guys are a great team. Obviously, I'm a huge Lorcan mark. I gave him the match of the night last week on NXT with his match against Leo Rush. And Burch, I feel, is very much a side of the same coin of Lorcan. Styles, hard-hitting, stiff, strong style, if you will. And they are just they're great as a team. So we start off with some back and forth groundwork. They're getting a lot of heat on Lorcan, and he finally ends up getting a hot tag to Birch. Birch ends up cleaning house. There was actually a decent amount of back and forth, as it wasn't very squash, if you will. The Everrise team took about 80% of this match, actually, getting the heat most of the time. You had a really sweet spot where Birch summoned Oni Lorcan from beyond the grave to hit their finish, which is the elevated spike DDT. They sort of get their opponents up in a magic killer position almost, and then go into spike DDT. Gives them the win. Crowd was relatively hot, though I will say for most of this taping, it was clear that the crowd was not as heated for this taping, or not taping, this live event as they were for last week's live event. Maybe lack of star power, not, no titles on the line or anything like that. Okay, so we finish the match and we get a weirdly lit, shady cut to Chelsea Green and Deonna Purrazzo. This was an awkward moment where lighting cues must have got mixed up or something. It was just weird. The lighting was off, then it was on, then it looked like they weren't reacting to the camera properly. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. They weren't doing anything, but it just came off kind of weird. We get our sixth match, Cameron Grimes versus Raul Mendoza. This, I will have to say, was possibly my match of the night. Even more so than the Keith Lee Dijakovic match. Sorry. I think this match was probably the best overall well-wrestled match. Raul Mendoza, though not quite as big of a name yet, is super smooth in the ring. He was fantastic in this match. Got over as a face. Cameron Grimes was great as well. He's very good. He's another one that I'm very high on right now, and I think has a lot of potential. Both guys getting in offense, back and forth. Mendoza hit a crossbody that was countered. It was like a crossbody countered into a moonsault, almost standing moonsault by Cameron Grimes. That was an interesting spot. That got a pretty big pop. You had Grimes get Mendoza into a unique submission position. I hadn't really seen that one. It was he had him in an arm bar, but then also had his legs stepped over the shoulder to like crossbody the shoulder as well. It was weird. You had an O'Connor roll. Grimes kicked out at 2 and then countered with his double foot stomp for the win. Now, the reason I'll only say this was my almost match of the night and I can't just go ahead and give it the match of the night was because the crowd was just not really there for this match. You're giving a push to Grimes at this point in time. He got a bit of a reaction when he first came out. Not quite as much as you would hope for. And really, with Raul Mendoza doing such a great job as a babyface and getting over as a babyface, when Grimes got the pin, you actually heard quite a few boos in the crowd. And you really didn't hear a whole lot of cheers. So, that being said, again, I feel like this Full Sail crowd may be interesting in the next coming weeks. I know next week, the October 2nd show is going to be a pretty big show. Like, going against AEW head-to-head, they're pulling out all the stops with your Matt Riddle, Adam Cole championship match, and also Shayna Baszler, Candice LeRae championship match. So that's a stacked card. But is the crowd going to be there for it? I hope so. And now for our 7th and final match of the night, we have Imperium versus Kushida and 2 partners yet to be named. Kushida enters first. Then we have Imperium entering, minus Walter. So you have Alexander Wolf, Fabian Eichner, and Marcel Bartel. Imperium enters the ring. Kushida points at his watch, which cues the Fashion Police. Yes, his 2 tag team partners are Fandango and Tyler Breeze, the Fashion Police. Breezango, whatever you want to call them. This actually makes sense because Imperium, their whole gimmick is they hate goofy wrestling. And Kushida with his Back to the Future gimmick and the Fashion Police just doing what they normally do are the exact opposite of what Walter and Imperium stand for. So this actually does make sense as a team up. I had actually guessed the Street Profits, but with them taking on the Undisputed Era, I guess you don't want to mix too much right now. Let's see. This was a pretty good match. I will say I miss Tyler Breeze's furry boots. The Breezango music and matching costumes are good. I do like their gear, but I do miss Breeze's furry boots. That's my only conceit to this tag team. So this match started off with a lot of heat on Kushida. Pretty much all the guys just getting infrequent tags. You had Eichner and Wolf beating on him pretty bad. You end up getting a hot tag to Breeze. He's knocked out of the ring. Then they started getting the heat on Breeze. Meanwhile, the crowd was not very hot. I actually had that noted again. There was a impressive double drop kick while Breeze was in a tree of woe, as Morrow questioned it. I'll see if I can get a clip of that. The way he said that made me laugh. Then you also had a pretty sweet double pull-off spot as Breeze was going for the hot tag. You had the 2 other members of Imperium run to the outside and pull off Kushida and Fandango right before Breeze could make the tag. And then continue to get the heat on Breeze. That was some nice little heel work. I enjoyed that. Finally, you get a Fandango hot tag. He cleans house. Whole big schmoz. You get Kushida becomes a legal man. He reverses into an O'Connor roll with a bridge and gets the victory. This match definitely left me a little bit disappointed. I kind of figured we weren't going to be getting a Walter match this quick into the feud. I assumed that he would be sending his goons out to take care of Kushida to begin with. But with people like Kushida and Breeze and Fandango, Wolf Eichner and Bartel, these are all good workers. And this match was good, worked well, but it was just lackluster. And with the crowd reactions being as dry as they were, it didn't help. I just feel like this match could have been so much more than it actually was, especially if you're going to make it the main event. In my opinion, this should have been the opener, and you could have had Dijakovic and Lee go for an extra 10 minutes. As Kushida's walking up the ramp, he gets assaulted from behind by Walter and laid out by Walter. And we end NXT with Imperium standing tall at the top of the ramp. So for our second live episode of NXT, I'm going to have to say I'm a little bit disappointed with this one. You came out of the gates so hot last week. Every match was really good. You had the one little slip-up with the women's match, the Aaliyah and Xia Li match. But other than that, a great show. Now, this week, it felt like a lot of weird pacing issues. Like I said, opening with the Keith Lee Dijakovic match, and then finishing sort of softly with starting on a high note and then ending it on a bit of a low note. I felt like the crowd was definitely more dead in the second hour as well, and far below what they were last week, which is not good news because this is only week 2. So where are we going to be in week 16? But again, still week 2. We got a lot of time left. So let's go ahead and get into our preview of next week's NXT. This will be the October 2nd, 2019 show. This will be the first episode to go full 2 hours live on USA. This is also going to be the first episode going head-to-head against AEW on the TNT network. So, pulling out all the stops, we're going to have a Shane Thorne versus Johnny Gargano match, Street Profits versus the Undisputed Era for the NXT Tag Team titles, Candice LeRae versus Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's title, and Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle for the NXT Championship. Those are just 4 of the matches that are confirmed, and 3 of them are title matches. Now, it wouldn't shock me if we get a North American title match thrown in here as well. You could maybe see the Dream rematch, or possibly a new contender. I just really think going up against AEW, they're going to put every possible bell and whistle they can into this show. So a North American title match would not surprise me. And now we'll get into the injury report. I kind of like that NXT is doing this. It does give it more of a sports feel, even though about 99% of these injuries are works or angles. But I'll still go through them. Number 1, they have Adam Cole is questionable after the Fujiwara armbar was placed on him by Matt Riddle. Actually, on their Twitter page saying that Cole was actually sent to get x-rays from the doctor. So we'll see if that's worked into the match. I'm sure it'll be worked into the match on Wednesday. It maybe even have Cole trying to worm his way out of the having to contest his title. Number 2, we have Raul Mendoza with a rib fracture that he got during his match with Cameron Grimes. They also have him as questionable as well. Number 3, Dominik Dijakovic with a cervical strain after his match with Keith Lee. They have him as day-to-day. And finally, Kushida, who they have listed with a left wrist injury. He does use that to perform his submission move, the hoverboard lock. So we'll see if that plays into any future storylines with Walter and Imperium. And now to end the show, I'm going to start a bit of a new segment where I'm going to focus on different independent promotions in the Chicago region and ones that are putting on shows. So this Saturday, September 28th, at the Logan Square Auditorium, you'll have AAW Pro running their Defining Moment show. As of right now, there's seven matches on the card that are scheduled, with more to come. Your number 1 match, you have Josh Alexander versus Sami Callihan. Callihan right now is the AAW champion, so this will be your main event championship match. You're also going to have David Starr versus Jake Something. This is for the AAW Heritage Championship. Jake Something is the current champion, and Starr will be challenging. Darby Allin versus Fatu, and this will be Darby Allin's final AAW match. So, any fans of Darby Allin on AEW, this will be your last chance if you're in the Chicago region to see him at an independent show. And let me say, if you haven't seen him yet, it's worth the price of admission. There will also be a fatal 4-way match between Kurt Stallion, Paco Gonzalez, Joey Lynch, and the Big AC, Ace Romero, with the winner getting a shot at any title of his choosing. You have a women's match of Ellison Kay versus Kimberly. You have Matthew Justice versus Masked Good Brother number 3. Matthew Justice is trying to claim the bounty placed on Masked Good Brother's head by Jimmy Jacobs. And finally, you'll have Jordan Oliver making his AAW debut versus Airwolf. Again, this is Saturday, September 28th at the Logan Square Auditorium in Chicago, Illinois. You can get your tickets at aawpro.ticketleap.com. That's aawpro.ticketleap.com. And if you use the promo code Chicago Wrestling, all one word, you can save $5 per ticket. I believe the last time I checked, the minimum tickets were $20. So $15 ticket, you and a buddy, $30. I'm sure you can make that happen. Go support your local independent wrestling, man. These are the people that are going to be the future stars, and you can help them support their dream and really help, mold the future of this thing that we all love. So that about wraps it up for today, guys. Make sure to follow the No Holds Barred Network on Twitter at NHB Network. Be sure to follow the All Elite Podcast at All Elite Pod on Twitter. I'm going to have one of the hosts on here, Kyle Masters, on here pretty soon, and we're going to be talking about the Wednesday Night Wars coming up. So be sure to check those guys out. You can follow him at Real Kyle Masters. Make sure to follow AAW Pro at AAW Pro for your Chicagoland independent wrestling. And you can follow me at Bones_Skelly on Twitter. And make sure to follow the podcast at TheNXT Podcast. Again, be sure to find us on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. Follow us on all our social media. Like, share, and subscribe. Every little bit helps. We're just starting out, and we're trying to grow. So every comment, share, and like I appreciate. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday with our preview of next week's show.